Hey guys, welcome back to Southern Gal True Crime. It is Wednesday, so we've made it halfway through the week. I hope everybody's week has been good so far. Tonight we're going to be taking a look at some cases that have been solved using forensics. I have always been fascinated with the forensic aspect of and how it's used to solve these crimes. From one back in the day when I watched CSI, that old television show. Um, and of course, I know that you cannot solve a crime in an hour like they do on TV, but it just always fascinated me. And with all the advances that have been made in the forensic field, more and more of these cold cases are getting solved using forensics, which is fantastic. So I thought I found an article, browsing Google as always, doing my research in my spare time, what little spare time I have. I forgot exactly what website I found it on, but I saved it in my browser, so I will put a link to it in the description box. So we will get to that. But first, as always, we have our featured missing person of the night. Let me get back to the right slide. There we go. And this information, as always, comes from neverforgottenar.org, which is the Arkansas Missing Persons Database. And tonight's featured missing person is Camden Bowline. He went missing. He's just 17 years old. He's a white male, 5'5", 140 pounds, brown hair. Once again, there's something in my way that I can't read, so I don't know what color, or brown eyes. I don't know. I'm assuming dark colored hair, black or brown hair. He went missing on October 1st of this year, so not very long ago at all, about a week or so, from Hot Springs, Arkansas. So if you have any information about Camden or his disappearance, you can contact the Hot Springs Police Department at 501-321-6789. I will put, as always, a link to this information in the description box. I implore you, please share it anywhere and everywhere you can to get this information out to as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. All right, with that very important information taken care of, we will get into our 6 cases that were solved using forensics. And now I think the title of the article I got it from said it was solved using new forensics. And like I said, I can't remember exactly when this article came out, but like I said, I'll put a link to it and you can read it. So the first case, and I'm sure I've heard of this case, and I'm sure most of you probably have heard of this, the identity of the boy in the box. Now, this is a very old case from 1957. So on February 25th of 1957, in the Fox Chase neighborhood of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the body of a young boy was found in a cardboard box. He was determined to be between the ages of 4 and 6. His cause of death was determined to be, and I always forget to say trigger warning. I always try to say trigger warning at the beginning of these videos, especially when it involves children. So trigger warning. His cause of death was determined to be trauma administered from a series of blows. And apparently he had suffered a long history of neglect and abuse. So that just infuriates me. And I've always said in my videos, these cases involving children touch me a little bit more deeply than all the cases I feature and share affect me. But when it comes to children, it's just even more sad. So it says, but beyond who was responsible for this despicable act, it was also the authorities found it. They were unable, gotta slow down, to identify the victim. He was given the title of America's Unknown Child until there was a break in the case in November of 2022. So, through the use of genetic testing and genetic genealogy, which is, I know I'm always harping on this subject, genetic genealogy is being more widely used. Hopefully, it's being more accepted as a form of identifying either victims or offenders. There's a controversy about the privacy thing, which I totally understand, but as far as I'm concerned, if it helps find identities of victims or offenders, I'm all for using it. But everybody's opinion is welcome here. So if you have an opinion about it, please leave it in the comments. Just always be respectful of the victims' families, and most importantly, each other. So, through genetic genealogy, the Philadelphia Police Department were able to pinpoint exactly who this young man was. At first, the police did not release the name. They kept it, as I say, close to their chest, stating only that he was a member of a prominent family in Delaware County. Now, don't know why they would not release the name. But when we all know when it comes to prominent families, they kind of have a little bit more leverage about what information they want released, or it could have been that the police may possibly, I don't know for sure, have thought that maybe a member of the family had something to do with his passing, because it did say that he did show signs of prolonged abuse and neglect. But on December 8th, they did finally release the name, and it was Joseph Augustus Zarelli. He was born on January 13th, 1953, making him just over the age of 4 at the time of his passing. He was able to be identified after a second cousin uploaded DNA to a public database, therefore the genetic genealogy. While the case hasn't been entirely solved, it says, this vital piece of information has provided new leads on suspects for the police. Now, of course, they're not releasing that I could find in researching any names, but I'm sure they're not going to release names, especially if it could possibly be a member of his family. So, we have the boy in the box that has finally been identified after, it's too late in the night for me to be doing math, but a long time. Took a long time, but thank goodness he was finally identified. All right, next we will go to, hold on, get a drink. Sorry. I know it's rude to drink on camera, but my mouth gets dry with my allergies. All right, so next we have the killing of Lindy Sue Beckler. Oh, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. On December 5th, 1975, 19-year-old Lindy Sue Beckler was stabbed to death in her apartment in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Prior to being stabbed 19 times in her chest, back, and neck, she had also been the victim of SA. Defensive wounds showed that she fought desperately for her life before succumbing to her injury, so she put up a fight. And I'm assuming, I'm going to go on the assumption that if you're fighting for your life, I know if I was ever, God forbid, if I was ever attacked, even if I knew I wasn't going to survive, I'm going to scratch and claw and get any kind of DNA I can from the offender. Usually under the fingernails they find it, so that hopefully at some point the offender would be identified and caught. But anyway, I digress. So she fought for her life, so kudos to her for that. But who was responsible for ending her life? Now, at the time, the police interviewed more than 300 people. That's a lot of people to identify. But they did their due diligence. Kudos to them for doing that. They spoke to crime scene experts, and they launched a task force, but nothing they did turned up any answers. For 50 years, this case went unsolved. That's a very long time. Now, I know there have been other cases that were probably longer than that, but 50 years is a long time for the victim to get justice, and a long time for the family to get justice and to get answers. But it was in 2022, on July 18th, 68-year-old David Vincent Sinopoli was arrested and charged with criminal homicide. Lancaster County District Attorney Heather Adams announced the update, stating the cold case was one of the oldest unsolved ones in the county. And after all these years, a discarded coffee cup helped lead to the arrest. Genetic genealogist C.C. Moore of Parabon Nanolabs, which I'm sure a lot of you may have heard her name. I don't know if it's still on, but they did one season on ID channel or one of the channels, or it may have been on a regular local channel, that featured her and how she used genetic genealogy and created the tree and to help solve these crimes. It's a very, very interesting show. But anyway, so through genetic genealogy, Mr. Sinopoli was put on the suspect list when DNA evidence from the crime scene had her determine that the offender probably had ancestors that came from the small Italian town of Gasparina. So she traced it not only within the U.S. but out of the country to Italy. Investigators then trailed Sinopoli for months, when they spotted him discarding a coffee cup at the Philadelphia International Airport. They scooped it up for testing. They compared his DNA to the evidence found inside the victim's underwear and found it to be a match. Sinopoli had no other connection to the victim besides the fact that they both lived in the same 4-unit building at the time of the crime. So that apparently, or not apparently, but possibly, he, of course, was an offender for her, but he could have been a possible serial offender. Trying to see if he was 68 years old. So like they say, you don't just wake up at 68 years old and decide, hey, I'm going to go harm somebody. So it's possible that he has other victims out there, and I'm sure since they have his DNA now, they will and did probably put it in the CODIS to see if they could possibly get any other hits from any other crimes. So thank goodness this was solved. 50 years, took a while, but it is solved, which is always a good thing. And like I said, hope or possibly they could connect him to other crimes, but we will just have to wait and see. And if there are any updates concerning Mr. Sinopoli that I can research and find, I will bring them to you. All right, next we have the killing of Lena Reyes Geddes. Lena was 37 years old. She was found deceased on April 20th, 1998. The cause of her death was a GSW. Her body was intricately disposed of. She was wrapped in a plastic bag, duct tape, and it says detailed knots. And then she was hidden inside of a sleeping bag inside of a carpet. So whoever this offender was went to great lengths to wrap her body up, disguise her body. It also says that her fingerprints had been cut off, um, which made it, of course, difficult for authorities to identify at the time. Um, for 2 decades, so 20 years, she was known nearly as maiden water victim. I think it's, she was discarded along a highway in Garfield County, Utah. In 2018, as the authorities were updating their missing person files, they were able to connect Geddes to this victim. Wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. In 2018, as the authorities were updating their missing persons files, they were able to connect Geddes. Okay, so apparently they found they had not been able to identify the body until 2018, when somehow, maybe through DNA, through DNA. If I would just finish reading this, we would all know what would happen. Okay, so they're able to connect Lena to this body, but it wasn't until June of 2022 that they were able to find the offender. So they extracted DNA from the rope that was used to bind Lena. The authorities determined that her offender was none other than her husband, Edward Geddes. As Edward had taken his own life back in 2001, his identity was determined by using the DNA of 2 of his living family members. Though, of course, no arrest can be made because he offed himself. The Utah Department of Public Safety officially considers this cold case solved. So, once again, another solved case using forensics. And, of course, tragic case, but it makes it even more tragic that it was her own husband that was the offender. But he took the coward's way out, and so he took care of himself. I don't mean to be crass or callous, but I have no empathy for somebody who would take another person's life, especially somebody that they supposedly loved and were married to. But I'll get off my soapbox. All right, next we have the identity of the Lady of the Dunes. Now, I had heard a little bit about this, but I had never researched it a whole lot. So this one was interesting to me. So on July 26, 1974, in the dunes of Provincetown, Massachusetts, a badly decomposed corpse was brought to the attention of the authorities. Laying face down on a beach blanket, the victim was an auburn-haired woman. She had pink painted toenails. Several of her teeth had been removed, as well as both hands and a forearm. So we had some dismemberment, possibly to try to delay identification. The body was nearly, trigger warning, I always try to say trigger warning. The body was nearly decapitated, possibly from strangulation, and one side of her head, she had a lot of blunt force trauma. Her cause of death was the blunt force trauma to the head. Likely done, it says, is likely done in her sleep or by someone she knew, judging by the lack of defensive wounds. There was also evidence of SA, which seems to have been carried out post-mortem. I'm sure you all know what that means, so I won't go into detail. Unfortunately, the state of the body made it just as hard to identify the victim as it was to identify the offender. So in 2018, Richard Hanchett decided to look for his birth mother. She had put him up for adoption back in 1958. He had heard how wonderful and beautiful she was, and he just wanted the chance to meet her. So that broke my heart when I read that, knowing the case. After he submitted his DNA to Ancestry.com, he tracked down his mother, who turned out to be Ruth Marie Terry of Tennessee. He tracked down her family only to learn that she had been reported missing decades ago, with no updates on her case. So on October 21st of 2022, the FBI was finally able to give Hanchett and Terry's family peace of mind. It says grim peace of mind. The Lady of the Dunes was identified as Terry after her bones were sent to DNA for testing. Her identity was determined by investigative genealogy, and her homicide was being actively investigated by the Massachusetts State Police. And in November, the police announced that they were seeking information on a now deceased man named Guy Rockwell Moldovan. It's believed that Terry had married Moldovan just months before she was killed. Now, key piece of information: Moldovan was arrested in 1960 in connection with the disappearance of his former wife and daughter, after their remains were found in their Seattle home. It says here he was freed in 1962 after a suspended sentence, which makes absolutely no sense to me. But anyway, so it is suspected. I don't think it didn't say here that they ever proved it, but it is suspected that this guy Rockwell Moldovan was most likely the offender who took Terry's life. But at least her son found his mother, or found out what happened to his mother, and got a little bit of closure. So that's always good. It's always better to have information, even though it's not the outcome that you want. At least you know what happened, and that's usually better. Obviously better knowing what happened than never knowing anything. All right, next we have the case of Sherry Herrera. So Sherry was 30 years old. She was found deceased along a California freeway on-ramp on March 30th, 1993. And her body was found 350 miles away from where she lived in Tulare County, which they said that's a mystery in itself. Why, 350 miles is a long way to go missing from and to be found from. So, I mean, you don't know if her life was taken where she was taken from, and then for some reason transported 350 miles, which makes no sense, because transporting a body that far, you risk the offender takes a risk of being discovered. So it's possible that the offender abducted her, kept her alive, drove her 350 miles, took her life, and dumped her body on the side of the road. But we don't know, but to me, that would make more sense than driving a body 350 miles. But please let me know what you guys think in the comments. Just always be respectful of everybody in any of these cases. So as there were no suspects at the time, the case quickly went cold for 30 years. So it's not 50 years, but 30 years is still a long time. So June 10th, 2022, 67-year-old truck driver Douglas Thomas was arrested for Herrera's homicide. Excuse me. At long last, DNA evidence had linked him to the crime. This connection was made after Thomas was linked by DNA to another case, which involved Shinda Denise Hayes, who was killed in 1992 at a Texas rest stop. This crime, the crimes were connected back in 2007 after the DNA profile collected from the Hayes crime scene was uploaded into CODIS. From there, investigators built a tree of suspects, and they narrowed it down between age and ability before approaching Thomas with a request for a DNA sample. In addition to homicide, Thomas was charged with a special circumstance allegation that the crime occurred during the commission of a SA. And like I said, I don't know when exactly this article was written, but at the time it says once Thomas goes to trial for the Hayes crime, he will be extradited to California to stand trial for the crime of Sherry Herrera. So, another one bites the dust, so to say, or so to speak. Like I said, I'll have to do research on this and see what the outcome of this case was. Sorry, dropping stuff here. All right. I think this is the last one. The identity of the I-65 killer. So, between 1987 and 1990, 4 different women had been attacked along I-65 in the stretch between Indiana and Kentucky. One woman, a 21-year-old hotel clerk, was lucky enough to survive the robbery. Unfortunately, she was SA'd. She was stabbed, but she did survive. 3 others before her, 41-year-old Vicky Heath, 24-year-old Margaret Peggy Gill, and 34-year-old Jean Gilbert, unfortunately did not survive. They were the unfortunate victims of a serial offender known as the I-65 killer. So Heath, Gill, and Gilbert had been GSW after their SAs. When the I-65 killer changed his MO, his victim lived to give the police a composite sketch, and DNA evidence was able to link this crime to the others. Unfortunately, that was not enough to track down this killer. However, after 35 years of searching, the police finally did find answers. In April of 2022, the I-65 killings were linked to Harry Edward Greenwell. And I was going to search and find the actual picture of him instead of this sketch, and I just got sidetracked and forgot to do it. So Greenwell had passed away in 2013 after amassing an impressive criminal record from 1963 to 1998. His identity was confirmed through the use of investigative genealogy. So I'm assuming investigative genealogy is the same thing as genetic genealogy. I'm just assuming. And linked to he was linked to another crime in 1991. Other unsolved crimes are currently being investigated for any connection to Greenwell. So, maybe they can possibly find, like I said, find links through DNA evidence or genetic genealogy, and link him to other crimes if he is responsible for them. And get some more of these cold cases solved. I think that was our last one. Yeah, that was our last one. Okay, guys. Well, I hope you found this interesting, informative. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. I would love to hear any of your comments about any of these cases, your thoughts on them. Please do share it. Any true crime groups you're in, any friends or family who are might be interested in this or interested in true crime. If you like what I do here at Southern Gal True Crime, please do consider subscribing. Sorry, I'm trying to get there we go. hit the notification bell to all, so you won't miss any new videos I upload. Mondays I have a missing person Monday. I feature 5 cold cases. Fridays I have the cold case of the week. And then sometimes, like today on Wednesdays, if I find something interesting that's true crime related, that I think you guys might enjoy or find informative, I'll bring it to you. So until next time, thank you very much for watching. Take care of yourselves. Be careful out there. Take care of each other so we can all make it through this life safely. And like I said, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.